Greetings and welcome to yet another episode of America on Trial, where legal experts unpack the most pressing issues of today. My name is Gidra Stasunaite, and together with me, there are distinguished legal panel. I would like to introduce you Adam Lamparello, an attorney, author, and professor of law at Georgia College. Fernando Leal, a New York attorney, and finally, Jeff Teichert, Assistant Attorney General for the state of Utah. And today on trial is Herschel Walker and his abortion scandal. So who is Herschel Walker? He's a Republican candidate for Senate, who has built his political platform as being extremely conservative. Yet there is another side to him. He has several domestic violence accusations. Also, there were reports about him being a not good father or non-present father. And now he is the hope for the Republicans to win that needed seat in the Senate. So, Adam, I would like to start with you. It seems appropriate, as previously you have mentioned several Republican candidates that you are not so optimistic about. And in fact, you mentioned Mr. Walker as one of them, and that happened even prior to this scandal. So I would like to ask you if you could give us a table talk about where Mr. Walker is right now when it comes to the political waters.
Well, thank you for that question. The polls are extremely close, and the revelation that Walker paid for an ex-girlfriend to have an abortion and that he was an absentee father are likely to hurt him somewhat in the polls. At the same time, however, I don't believe that should influence voters in any significant way. What matters is the policies that Walker is advocating for. Do the policies help voters economically? Are they going to lead to less inflation? Are they going to lead to lower gas prices? Are they going to lead to a better economy? Going into someone's personal life and judging them based on decisions they made years ago is really nothing more than a character assassination attempt, an October surprise, if you will, that really has no basis in or merit towards whether the candidate will endorse policies that will benefit the American people. And as far as abortion goes, let me just say that the Supreme Court was correct in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health to overturn Roe versus Wade, which had no basis in the Constitution's text and was not inferable from any provision in the Constitution's text.
Adam, we will revisit the general Supreme Court's decision that overruled the 50 years precedent.
But I'll just say this, Guidry. It's interesting to me that liberals have come out with this revelation that Walker paid for an abortion for an ex-girlfriend. It's funny, since the liberals are so pro-choice and so pro-abortion, you think they would have applauded Walker for supporting his ex-girlfriend and getting the abortion rather than abandoning his ex-girlfriend. But when it comes to politics, hypocrisy seems to reign every day.
Jeff, would you agree that there was a hypocrisy in paying for abortion and lying about doing that in the first hand for someone who is applying for one of the highest positions, for one of the highest offices in the United States, and someone who has very repeatedly, who has built his political campaign on anti-abortion movement and calling any abortion a murder? Do you think that that's something that we could take slightly, as Adam proposed?
No, I actually see immense hypocrisy in it if these allegations are true. Now, Walker, as I understand it, has denied that he ever knew she had an abortion until recently. I assume the truth will come out at some point or another about that. I do agree with Adam that I'm going to vote for the candidate that has the policies closest to what I agree with. But yeah, I do think there's immense hypocrisy and the American voter doesn't like it. As Adam pointed out, the polls are extremely close. And so a 2% difference, this October surprise, which I totally acknowledge it was timed to give him a loss in the polls at the last possible minute before the election. And so I do see hypocrisy the other way as well. But, if it's a very tight race, a little thing, I don't want to say this is a little thing, but a little scandal could push it one way or the other. So it worries me that we decide elections based on things like this, but oftentimes that's the tipping point.
I think I want to clarify, for you to clarify, what do you consider, how you define things like this? What is things like this in this particular case that might influence our decision for whom to vote?
Well, I don't know that anybody on this panel is going to alter their vote based on these revelations, but I think, there's a certain percentage of the public that will say, okay, Herschel had to cheat on his wife to be in this situation. We don't like that. We didn't like it when Bill Clinton did it. We don't like it now if Herschel Walker's doing it. There are also a certain number of people who will say, we don't think that if he's out there pretending to be extremely pro-life, that his private conduct has measured up. I'm not saying everybody will vote on that, but it's only going to take a few percentage points to tip the election one way or the other.
Thank you, Jeff. Fernando, what do you think? Should the public take slightly such a lie? Should this person be trusted in representing and making decisions or being honest with the public? And what do you think, which side those 2% could go when it comes to voting for him or voting against him?
Yeah, Guidry, I'm sitting between two absolute maniacs who sit here and say that, we're going to vote based on his policies, but people are hypocritical and, we have to splice hairs. They're both insane. The fact is this: Herschel Walker is running on a campaign of that African-American fathers are absent in the home. Guess what? He has 4 kids that he refuses to acknowledge, and he's been absent in their life. Next, he is pro-life to the highest degree, rape, no abortion whatsoever, but yet he got this woman pregnant twice. The first time he paid for her abortion, and then the second time he was trying to strong arm her into another abortion, at which time she said no and they broke up. He wasn't married at the time that the woman became pregnant, which leads to, can this person be trusted? Can he be trusted to follow through on what he's saying, come through with correct policies? The answer is no, because he is a maniac, just like the 2 people sitting next to me.
Guidry, can I respond to this?
And Dobbs, I'll say it now, was wrong.
Okay, we will come back to Dobbs.
I'll just say it now, and I'll get it out of the way. He cannot, Herschel Walker can't sit here and say that he's against absentee fathers and be an absent father himself, and he can't sit here and say he's pro-life, but yet when it's his personal life, all of a sudden he wants abortions for the masses. And the people that came out against him, one of them is his son, who is on Twitter and is a conservative and a Christian, and his name is actually Christian. He is one of the people that is speaking the strongest against his father. And then now we also have the woman who got fed up with what Herschel Walker was saying, and that's why she came out and said, hey, he's Mr. Pro-Life, but here's really what he's about.
Yes, Fernando, we understand your opinion about him. Adam, you wanted to respond really quickly.
I do want to respond because obviously Fernando has not taken his Xanax today. My response is this to voters: why do you care about the sex life of a candidate? Why do you care about who they're sleeping with? You're not in their shoes. You're not in their relationships. So why would you judge them? And quite frankly, what you should really care about is, are their policies going to benefit you? Are they going to benefit this country? Because in the end, that's what's going to affect you. Now, as far as the hypocrisy, people evolve on certain issues. Stacey Abrams was pro-life. She evolved and became pro-choice. And the same thing happened with Herschel Walker.
Yeah,
so
but Stacey Abrams...
There's no reason to judge him. And
Yes,
most
but
importantly,
I have to cut you off because here is a complete disattached comparison. I absolutely do not get it, and I don't think that those two people should be mentioned in the same two sentences.
Well, that's your personal
Adam,
bias saying that.
Adam, what do you think? What do you think, in your opinion, as someone who lives in Georgia and is really close to this current situation? Do you think that Walker will win, will manage to escape this kind of situation?
I think it's difficult to tell, but I think that Walker will likely win in a very close election. And as far as Walker's son goes, voters should know that his son is a MAGA Republican. His son is extremely conservative. And his son did no service to the Republican Party or its chances of taking over the Senate by coming out with that video. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily know if I believe him. So my point is, I don't judge people based on their private lives. I judge them based on their policies, and I recognize that they evolve on issues, and we shouldn't judge them for so doing.
You know, Adam, you responded to Fernando. I will respond to you. I think, in my personal opinion, what is happening, what Walker did, his platform, his lies to the people, being completely inconsistent, makes him absolutely untrustable. I think that it is very disgraceful to the United States to
have
you
have the same opinion of Stacey Abrams, who had the same exact evolution.
Yes. You see, and for me, it's very, very difficult to see how someone could disconnect such a direct issue in someone's behavior from his platform. We are talking about, to me, it is the face of hypocritical fight for the abortion rights or against pro-life. I want to say that it seems like white men in elite high positions are preaching completely different story, taking away from women's right to
It's a racist statement, number one. I don't hear you calling out Stacey Abrams for reversing her position.
Okay, we responded to each other. Jeff, I wanted to ask you about another issue. I wanted to ask you about Democratic Party and about how they are using this decision, the Dobbs decision that ended the 50 years precedent in Roe case. Currently, we know that Democratic Party invested some around $18 million in advertisement, and in all of that advertisement is focused on the abortion issues. Do you think that public push against such a Supreme Court's decision that is right now implemented by Democratic Party could help them in the midterms?
Well, first of all, let me throw one idea out on trust. I remember when Newt Gingrich was caught up in the middle of a sex scandal and a reporter asked him, "Why should we trust you?" And he looked the reporter squarely in the eye and said, "You shouldn't. I'm a fallible human being. I make mistakes. I think that democracy is built on a healthy suspicion of government officials. And so you should take everything I say and every other politician says with a grain of salt." I happen to agree with that. I think we shouldn't trust politicians too much, to be honest with us, and they've proven time and again that they're not. The allure of money and power is too great. So just to throw that out there on trust. Now, in terms of the Dobbs decision, I do think the Democrats are going to make some hay out of that in the fall. Will it tip the election in their direction? I don't think so. I believe, as Adam said on a prior show, it's the economy, stupid. Originally coined by James Carville. I think that's where people are most concerned and where they're going to go. On this abortion issue, I want to point something else out on the Dobbs decision. Number one, Dobbs did not outlaw abortions. Now, a lot of people think when they look at the Supreme Court, oh, the Supreme Court reversed Roe versus Wade, now abortion's illegal. That is not true. It has gone back to the states, and the states are making their own legislation on it. A second point on Dobbs is you can get as mad as you want at the Supreme Court for the Dobbs decision or any other decision. It's not going to do you any good. Carry your signs and protest outside the Supreme Court building if you want. But you know what? they're life tenured. They're not coming up for re-election at some point. So they don't really care what the people with the cardboard signs outside the Supreme Court say. That is one of the major reasons why we don't want judges being too creative, writing things into the Constitution that really were never there.
Yeah, we just want...
In another election, we can't throw them out. And we need broad national consensus in the form of a constitutional amendment to clarify these kinds of issues, not a Supreme Court decision, which may hold up for years and years, even though it's based on a flimsy foundation.
Fernando, do you think that Supreme Court's decision was a reasonable and very giving rights and equally treating people, giving them opportunity to address the abortion issue judicially within their states? Or do you think that it was an open season of Hunger Games where we had already politicians in a judicial system set up, and there were also laws, trigger laws, in, if I'm not mistaken, more than 14 states that automatically outlawed the abortion? What is your opinion about that?
It was open season, and the decision is wrong because they come out and they say that abortion isn't historically rooted in the Constitution. Therefore, it shouldn't be allowed, and they shouldn't have an opinion. It should be to the state. It's a load of nonsense because let's take Loving versus Virginia. Where in the Constitution does it say that a black man can marry a black woman? Nowhere. And Justice Thomas, shut up and stop cutting me off. Justice Thomas, who was married to a white woman, but prior to Loving would have been hung from the highest tree in Washington to make an example out of him. So let's cut the nonsense. Nowhere in the Constitution is it rooted that African Americans have rights. As a matter of fact, what's rooted in the Constitution is that they are what? 3/4 of a human being? Not even a full human being? So let's cut your BS original nonsense. Because the truth of the matter, if you're going to start deciding decisions based on what's historically rooted, actually, all of us, probably with the exception of Jeff, don't have any rights in the Constitution. You're Italian. Once upon a time, you were called a Dago and a Wop, and you weren't allowed to have a job. Guidry wouldn't even be here. She would be barefoot and pregnant walking around in her house. So let's just cut the absolute hypocritical nonsense. It is nonsense. The fact is that there are plenty of rights that weren't rooted in the Constitution, but the Constitution was written in a way that we can evolve to decide these rights, period, whether people like it or not.
Adam, I can see that you cannot wait to respond. Do it.
Everything that Fernando said is entirely inaccurate. First of all, Fernando, Loving versus Virginia was based on the Equal Protection Clause, the text of the Constitution. Roe versus Wade, there was no basis in the text of the Constitution, and there was no possible way. Well, excuse me.
I'm going to cut you off the way you did me.
Okay, well, there's no basis in the Constitution's text. It is not inferable from the Constitution's text. There's no basis in history and tradition to support the right to abortion. And the reason that the Supreme Court should have never decided the abortion issue is because issues that are not contained, rights that are not contained in the Constitution or inferable from them, belong to the people, to the democratic process, where law is made from the bottom up. It doesn't belong to philosopher kings and 9 unelected elitist judges on the Supreme Court. And that was the problem with Roe, and it was rightly overturned. Now, you can hurl all the insults at me you want.
Show me where in the Constitution says that you have a right to interracial marriage.
Oh, Bergefell versus the Equal Protection Clause, which is what it was based on. And I would suggest that you take a course in constitutional law where you hurl insults and inaccuracies at the audience.
Blacks were 3/4 of a person was repealed years and years ago.
Doesn't matter. It's still written in the Constitution, right?
And
guys, there are... Yes, Jeff, you please finish your point.
If the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause means anything at all, it means that race is irrelevant.
Thank you.
There are two sides to every story, and to constitution.
The right side, the wrong side.
Evolving constitution and original constitution. I think there are a lot of issues that we are never going to agree, but as long as there is discourse and we can communicate it to each other, I think we're already progressing and we're already representing the democratic stance of the United States. So with this point, I think we are going to close this discussion, but it's definitely not the end to this topic that we're going to revisit on multiple times. I have a sense about that.
Thank you.
And today, for hot topic subject, on trial is cell phone. Cell phone during the dinner. Is it okay, or should we leave it at the doors? Adam, start.
I think that cell phones, I think that social media is destroying our society. So the answer is no.
Jeff?
I'll go back to George Washington, who said he famously wrote a bunch of rules of etiquette. And one of those was, do not read any books or papers while in company, but if you must do so, ask leave. And I think that's a good rule for dealing with cell phones. I tell people all the time, I think it's rude to have your cell phone on the table when you're eating a meal with someone. You need to put it aside, unless there's a pending kind of emergency. You need to put it aside and focus on the people you're with.
Fernando is a busy attorney in New York. What do you think about that? Can we take a break from cell phone during the dinner?
Well, Gadri, guess what? This is going to be a perfect 3 for 3 because I don't believe that cell phone should be at the dinner. I don't think you should have your kids playing with iPads and playing with your cell phone when you're sitting at dinner. Nobody knows how to hold a conversation anymore. People just sit there and stare at each other when they don't have a cell phone in their hand. Kids don't know how to interact with themselves or with anybody else, which are all skills that we're going to need in life. Yes, there's a place for your cell phone. Carry it with you. We all have emergencies, right? We all have busy lives. We all have clients that are going to hound us. You let it ring, look and see who it is. If it's an emergency, get up and answer it. If it's not, ignore it. But people are tethered to their cell phones as if it's an IV full of blood that's keeping them alive.
Yeah, it looks like you have some in common with the kids, Fernando.
Thank you, Fernando, Adam, and Jeff, and thank you for watching. Let's leave the phones in the hallway or different room, and let's spend time with each other. Take care and see you next time.